Welcome to another episode of the Shredder Show. Today, I've got great friends from sunny Marbella, Mr. Mike Geary, and today we're going to talk through super low-calorie diets, when they're appropriate, how to handle them, and maybe why you should do them. So to give it a bit of background, Mike is a great friend of mine, competes in classic physique at a high level, amazing prep coach for females he specializes in, and had some amazing results recently. So thank you very much for your time, Mike.
Thank you very much, Charlie, for having me on, and it's great to catch up with you again. And I'm just finding that this topic will be a very, very interesting one because, especially for females and even yourself now, I know you're going through a bit of a harsh dieting phase now at the minute, and I've done it myself. So it's probably just to open up people's eyes, like you said, is when is the right time to implement a diet like this. The reasons, the pros, the cons, when to pull back. Another very interesting one is to understand when to actually pull someone back from a low diet, and maybe how to take someone out of low calories and start to bring their calories back up to a maintenance level. Could be quite interesting for us to kind of run through here. Even just to start it, how are you feeling yourself now, considering you're doing a bit of a lower calorie diet at the minute?
So it's not been too bad. Yesterday was the first day in about 5 years I've done 0 carbohydrates in a day. So my current macros are 140 grams of protein on rest days, 90 grams of fat, 0 grams of carbs. So today is day 2. And what is actually quite difficult to get your nutrition to really match that. What I found is I'm eating a lot. Fortunately, I like eggs. So I'm eating 10 eggs a day. I have 2 meals, which are 5 eggs. And to be honest, I actually love it. What I do is I cook a shitload of veg and then I fry 5 eggs and I put the eggs on top of it and the yolks run into the eggs. It's fucking banging. But it's quite nice and a different change to have a higher fat diet because I've been so used to eating certain foods. Having some variety has not actually been too bad. But I find the key is just trying to bulk meals out with very low calorie vegetables, that are very low carbohydrates, to try and have some substance to meals, to try and keep you going, if that makes sense.
100%. And I did that myself. Now, when my last prep, I hit around, I think it was 1,500 calories. I was doing pretty much as protein, low fat then. So I think I did 300 protein. Was it 30 fat and 0 carb, or 25 gram of carb from trace? Something in around it was like that. But say when you're setting that up now, when you're deep in your diet, will you use trace from the likes of peanut butters and dark chocolate, and will you ignore the carbohydrate intake from that? Some people get very caught up. I found this a lot with clients, that they do get very caught up if they're macro tracking rather than actually a set meal plan.
Yeah, I would try and have stuff that has nothing in it. So the fat sources I'm using are hardcore. So not hardcore, but there isn't any carbs, eggs, literally liquid fish oil, salmon, and coconut oil. Those are really the added fat sources I'm having. And other than that, and then just the fat and some of the meat I'm eating.
Perfect. And how long was this phase do you feel you're going to be running this for? Is this just a 2-day just to test it, or will this be
it's just
7
a 2 day
to 10
to test it and to try and drop off a lot of water weight. So I did a change in my nutrition. I realized I was massively underestimating how much sodium I needed, and started adding 12 grams of salt to my food every day. And my weight jumped up 2 kilos and I got a lot of fullness back. And it's made a big difference to training performance wise, but now cranked the carbs back to see what happens. And I dropped 1.5 kilos yesterday, and I'll probably be another big drop today. And it's one of those things, is just experimenting to see what works with your body. The key thing I found though is trying to spread the food across the day is an important thing, and plan things out properly. And another thing has been trying to I use one of the meals is literally a scoop of protein, and I blend it with loads of ice and a little bit of almond milk. And it's 150 calories or something, but it's very filling and it feels like you're having a lot. And it's these little manipulations that are really important to make sure that you feel like you're actually consuming something. And for me, that's the key in terms of, if you have to go to a very low calorie situation, that you're clever with what you do with your food, because then you still have some volume to it. It's just low in calories.
True. And like you said, that's one of the staples would be the whey ice and a little bit of almond milk. That's a winner when it comes to anyone, especially running kind of low calories. But have you done any training on this setup yet, or is it a double rest day then?
It's just double rest day. And to be honest with you, cardio was dragging arse a bit this morning. So I'll be interested to see how I feel training tomorrow. I'm not going to lie. I'm not expecting a stellar performance, but we will see. But I tell you one thing that's been interesting. I actually slept much better last night with a much higher fat diet, which is interesting.
I noticed the same myself, because when I switched, I went from about 300 carbs straight down to trace when I was around that kind of 4 week out mark. And I found that as well, like even the initial day or two, like I didn't struggle with the diet. Like when I ran it, it was kind of like day 8, when I hit that kind of 8 day mark of actually doing low calories, is when I started getting that brain fog and just fatigue. Like during the morning, I have that productive window, but it's that kind of 5 p.m. onwards where I did struggle. And a lot of people probably won't be able to relate, but I'm sure you're starting to feel it now. Is if you drive to the gym now, when the hardest aspects is actually getting out of the car to actually get to the gym, or like contemplating, if you're the way you're sitting on your desk now, when we're finished this podcast, the thought of actually getting up out of that chair is probably 10 times worse than anything you've coming for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it's not the most fun situation, but it's good to have challenges, and in life it's good to push things to the extreme, because then when you go back to normal life, things then become easy. An interesting topic. Have you got any foods or meals that you recommend for clients in terms of very low calorie options?
To be honest, like one of the best winners when it comes to this is anything that you can add with egg whites. Literally, like egg whites is one of the ultimate volume. Like you said, egg whites is what I try and get a lot of people. Like an egg white pancake would be one of the kind of specialities that I would ask clients to be running. Because if you think of running low calories, like people will kind of go, like if you go like 100 gram of chicken or whatever, 150 gram of chicken, you're like, I'm going to get 30 grams of protein. That'll be gone very, very quickly. Whereas for, say, if you run 300 ml of egg whites, bit of onions, mushrooms, very low calorie veg options in through it, like you're going to get a very, very filling meal through that. And it's something that I ran myself. Like I ran 2 portions of egg whites a day. So I had about 600 ml of egg whites over 2 meals. I did what you did there now as well, with the whey, the ice, a little bit of almond milk, and even freezing it, literally putting it in the blender, freezing it up so it thickens up. If you can get away with low calories, if you're doing like say trace carbs, like one of the winners for anyone is a high volume Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt with a scoop of whey, even a fat source through peanut butter, even what everyone's craving on about now in the UK. I don't know, do you have it yet in Dubai? Would be the drizzle peanut butter. Do you know? Did you see the squirting? Have you seen that yet?
No.
No, that's one of my clients actually gave it to me there now. So it's literally like it's liquidized peanut butter. So you're actually able to just like scoop it out now in that aspect and just onto the meals. It's a game changer. But I'd find them meals would be one of the best options to go with. Sometimes people, like if you're going to go hardcore and be like chicken and veg only 5-6 times a day, it does get very monotonous. It'll get the job done, but hunger cravings, hunger signalings, ghrelin, everything's going to go through the roof. And it's very hard to be sustainable to 5-6 meals of very, very bland food, which I don't know. Have you tried it yourself? Have you ever tried that 4 or 5 same meals?
And I think it's interesting. I think one of the big things I noticed is the texture of food. You like different things. Like, and I think that's why it's important. Like, a weird one that I like, if you're really low calories, is like instead of eating rice, is breaking rice cakes up into cut up chicken and veg, and adds a different texture. So one of the things I notice I really like is different textures of foods, where if you're eating the same thing over and over and over again, it'll make a big difference. But a top tip I would say as well is like trying different seasonings, different spices, like just to try and add more variety, so it's less like Groundhog Day every day.
Exactly. And the one aspect to even keep an eye on, even with spices, I actually had this conversation with one of my females lately, is when she switched to lower calories, she ended up doubling up nearly on her spices and high sodium spices. And we ended up getting a kind of a big fluctuation in body weight moving up, which again, from where her calorie set point was, it's something I didn't really expect straight away. And then when I delved more into it, I was like, okay, your water intake is here, your salt, sodium, electrolyte balance. And then she did send me, goes, oh, I'm actually using about 2 grams on each meal of this spice, literally like dousing in it. And they're little kind of hidden things. Like, so if someone is dieting extreme, there is these little variables that you need to look out for, that, like you said earlier, you've added in like your 12 grams of sodium recently. And if it's a metric you're not tracking, if you're at, that's say a competition diet, and you do add it in, it's going to add, yes, to performance in the gym. It's going to add to your pumps. It'll add obviously to your hydration process. You'll be a lot more on it. Whereas, like you said, you've seen them spikes in body weight. And if you were like not chatting with your coach about it or anything like that, that can be very kind of misleading for people. Like, you know, when you see that big jump in the scales, but there is a reason behind it. Something that I do as well with my clients, especially like even with the females, is tracking from at least minimum like 8 to 6 weeks out, would be kind of tracking sodium intake as consistent as possible. Because you know yourself, we could do 2-3 grinds of pink salt, whatever, on one meal. You might skip a meal or two. And it really does have a big swing, especially at the end. And for the likes of you, when you're going to be experiencing like your peak week in the coming weeks leading into your shows, even the manipulation of sodium, as if that'll be kept inconsistent, or obviously if it's dropped out a little bit and then it's fed back or it's added back in to the show, like there's multiple variables. Like you see protocols where people actually diet into shows where they cut their water intake 36 hours or so before, and then they'll cut their salt intake. Then they go on stage and they expect to be, as we call, bone dry, but they can't get a pump no matter what they're eating because there's no fluid, there's no sodium. It's one of the biggest aspects that you will encounter with athletes who enter the stage. And what you'll always see is when they come off stage, they rehydrate. What's the first thing they normally go for is a cookie or something. So you'll get all that kind of sugars, salt, etc. in, and then 20 minutes after stage, they look 10 times better with a pump because they can actually like dilate with their blood vessel now because the water and salt is moving through. Where you are sitting now at the minute and you're leading into that, is that something that you're looking forward to now, is like peak week? And like, are you kind of thinking about, say, like calorie aspect? Like, have you got a plan running in as of yet by dieting down aggressively and feeding back up into it, or what are you kind of thinking?
Well, interesting. Last week I had a day where I did 500 grams of carbs and then 30 sushi rolls before bed, and my physique the next day looked like a different ball game. And it just shows how flat my body can go and then how it can just explode suddenly. So it just needs to be kept full. And if I go too flat, I find it difficult to refill up, basically. So, and it's not fatigued.
It is, like, and like you said, it's a very kind of close kind of ball game you need to play when you're dieting. And our level is, if you get too flat and if you run it too long, like a good example of someone, if people do follow any type of bodybuilding or like open bodybuilding, last year would have been James Hollinghead, who ran into the Olympia, and about 3 weeks out, he looked great. And then they just kept bringing him down, flatten. And he couldn't fill back up for the show. Whereas where you did there is you ran yourself very flat. You got the hit from carbohydrates, your glycogen level refilled, your sodium levels, your fluid intake was probably on point. You get up, then you probably got like a 48-hour, if not 72-hour window of that like fullness, that pump you might have achieved in the gym before you started to not notice some intramuscular fullness drop off again, which again is really good aspect. And performance-wise, what did you notice after implementing that, say, the next two sessions?
My strength came out massively, and I actually didn't fucking hate training because I was at the point where I was so depleted, like at the start of workouts, I was just like, I would have wanted to be anywhere else other than having to like lift weights. And that's when you know you're in a bad position, because your body's going to atrophy muscle tissue and it's not productive.
100%. Like, I've been there. I remember chatting with Callum this year, and literally he was like, how's training? And my only response was dog shit. And then he just sent kind of laughing faces, like, another few days and we'll top you up. And it's just getting that right balance. And sometimes what you'll experience with people, like, say their first time dieting for a competition, or going to these extreme levels of body fat, they may get one bad session in the gym. Like, you know yourself, when you get your first bad session, a lot of people will then go, oh, I need a refeed, I need whatever, I need a deload off training. Like, you need to be able to manage these markers over probably a 2 to 3 day window. So like for my clients, for example, if they get a bad session, I want them to inform me of the first bad session. We'll see if it's a training day or rest day the next day. If it is a training day, we'll continue as going. We'll check performance in that session now as well. And then if required, then we'll take the data that's required, like, right, this is 2 in a row, no interest in training. We can see from the physique. Even another good aspect would be looking at post-workout shots after a day or two of them poor sessions to see like what level of a pump can someone achieve on their calorie intake. Whereas then you'll be able to make them decisions of pushing up calories, being able to maybe pull back cardio, like anything just to mitigate fatigue. Something now as well is what I kind of specialize more in, like I said, would be like bikini fitness girls with competition prep. Like recently, like I've had a lot of high placings. I had a girl win an overall in a show last weekend. And to get in that position at times, a lot of people are unsure of, and they're actually shocked by how far these girls will have to drive their bodies to actually reach stage conditioning. I have a girl going for a pro card in Poland in 2 weeks' time. And literally she's in that position that she's nearly ready. I seen her in person there last Sunday when I went back to Ireland. But what the difference between seeing visuals and in person, like visuals, yeah, it looked like everything was coming together there. In person, when when you see a physique move, like when you see it rotate, you can see, like, for females, one of the most important parts when it comes to NPC will be like looking obviously through hamstring glutes. So looking there in the pictures, they look like they're literally pretty much there. And I was kind of like, right, we can possibly cruise in, but I'll get a look in person. In person, I was like, right, we need to pull a little bit more. Like, by looking at her in person, if you looked at her, you'd be like, she's ready. But then when in person, it was kind of like, right, 2-3 pounds now to pull off here. So this girl now has had her cardio ramped up now a little bit. She's had her calories pretty much slashed. Like that, what you said about rice cakes and having the different textures. She was running cream of rice as her pre-workout. So I pulled it out and gave her 4 rice cakes. Whereas, you know yourself, if you're coming from a high volume cream of rice and to rice cakes, in your head, you're pretty much like, shit, like this is a big change. But what I find with the rice cakes as well is the crunch. Is that what you found as well? Like, when you kind of,
when you're eating it, it feels like a treat.
It does, doesn't it? Like, so I swapped them in for her, and she's in a position now that she's running 75 minutes cardio. She was running longer. She was doing an hour and a half, if not an hour 45. We got to a position where her body, she was dropping like crazy. Like, she was dropping kilo every 3-4 days. So we had to kind of pull back. So I pulled her back. We kind of stabilized her now with her body weight at the minute, but we just want to get that small bit more. So like protein, she's running around 125 grams of protein. Trace carbs, like she's running 5 rice cakes, which is about 20 grams of carb, is her only carbohydrate hit. Fats now at this stage with females, like ideally I don't like to run fats too low for an extended period of time. But unfortunately with bodybuilding, the judges don't care what you did to get there. Like, you don't go on stage and tell someone your story that I did 2 hours cardio and I ran like 1,000 calories or sub 1,000 calories to get here. No one cares, unfortunately, as much as like you will struggle. And what I like to see then is the people that can actually pull through these moments. And even like yourself and myself who have ran low calories, I feel by doing it myself that like I can relate to these clients who are running these low calories, because I know what it's like to do 0 carb for 2 or 3 weeks. When I'm pushing someone in that manner, I know the metrics to look out for, even from myself when they're texting me, telling me how they're feeling, when they're like literally can't sleep, they're waking up to go to the bathroom 4 or 5 times a night. Like, there's so many little metrics to look at. And from the general public, like, this is an area, as you know yourself, like if you work with like lifestyle clients and change like that, this is an area you don't need to go near. This is just more for people to be aware of what these, like yourself, myself, and these clients of mine, maybe your future clients too, if you're having anyone to go on stage, what they'll have to go through. What did you find now as well would have been the biggest eye opener for you with kind of this kind of style of dieting at the moment? Like, do you what I find as well is, would you wake up like dreading your day, or are you waking up going, fuck yes, just bring it, I'm ready to get through it?
I'm good at the start of the day and bad at the end of the day. I want to go to bed so I can get up to eat.
I know the feeling. Like, you literally want to be like in bed by 8 o'clock or whatever, just so you can have that, as we call it, the time machine to breakfast, so we can actually get up, get the food moving again. What would you find yourself? This is one of the biggest aspects you could see as well, especially for people doing extreme dieting. How are you with food cravings via social media bases? Like, are you switched off from it, or are you?
I just don't. I don't look at shit like that online, so it doesn't really bother me. The only thing you have to buy is like the land of temptation. So it's like you go outside, there's just food and restaurants everywhere. So that's challenging. And one of my favorite things is going out for food, which I can't do. So that's frustrating. But for me, it's not really necessarily. I have been craving weird stuff that I wouldn't normally want, but it's not I want specific foods. I just want more food. So I would just want more chicken and rice. I'd love a massive fucking bowl of oats and like bury my face in it. Like, it's not necessarily like junk food or any weird stuff. It's just like my body just wants calories. And the issue I'm getting now is that I can't sleep. Like, I'm waking up really early because my body's trying to wake me up to go and eat.
Yeah, and that is one of the biggest aspects people will struggle, will face when they're doing diets like this, is that fact of waking up multiple times at night, waking up at 4 a.m. and your stomach is screaming at you, and all you want to do is just smash 10 rice cakes with a bit of peanut butter on it and go back to bed. Whereas is that resilience that obviously we have to show when we're kind of going for these kind of low levels of body fat, and like to achieve it, it is very, very difficult. And again, once you do reach that set point, it is just about like how to actually even get yourself out of it. And is this something you've even thought about yourself? Like, say your show dates, is it 2 you've booked in so far, or do you have an end date?
I'm doing the Dubai show and the Romania show, and I haven't practically thought about the plan coming at the back end of it, but I know what I'm like, that I'm not like, I have one day where I'll probably eat like a bit of a twat. I might have some food or whatever, but then I'll just go back to eat normally, and I'll probably just go back up to maintenance straight away, like 2,500, 3,000 calories. And then when you've been on like poverty macros for like a while, 3,000 calories is like the greatest thing in the world, and you'll feel fucking amazing.
The difference, or like say when I finished the Spain show, like I drove back from Alicante to Marbella, so about a 6-hour drive, and I kind of kept on plan after the show, like chicken and rice for 2 meals over the 6-hour drive. Then I had some food with the lads here. Like I actually had some clients that flew over who actually couldn't make it to Alicante because of the 6-hour drive. Like they flew into Marbella, so there was a group of about 10 of us. But I found that the second day after being on, like I went straight up to 3,800 calories post show. Like there was none of this slow reversing, and that's probably an area that is worthwhile discussing as well, as about setting up a reverse diet, like coming out of this position. Whereas I went up to this high set point, and it helped me stick to plan more. Whereas if you're someone who comes out of diet, say you do Romania, and say let's just pull numbers arbitrarily out of the air. So you're doing, say 1,500 calories is your lowest. And then obviously you went to peak week. So obviously you carb load, whatever. And then you get like, you have a bump up on them days of 600, 700, 800 carb. You do your show, you have your day of being a twat, as we say, you enjoyed whatever, go to bed feeling sick, etc. That's also possibly one of the best and worst feelings post-competition diet, is going to bed with a rock hard stomach with indigestion issues, like you're gassy, like you're burping constantly, because it helps me even align in my head that I don't want to feel like this tomorrow. Like no matter how hungry you feel, when you go to bed with the worst pain in your stomach after a day of eating like a bell end, as we say, it can really align people. Like, have you ever experienced like that from a diet, that you diet like?
The only time this happened was after the last time I competed. I went to a Turkish restaurant. I ate so much food. I remember wake up in the night, lying on my bathroom floor. My stomach was like a turtle, and I just projectile vomited. I literally, I remember reading about a supermodel or something who died from her stomach exploding because she ate too much. I thought I was genuinely going to die.
It is that, like, even my first show 3-4 years ago now as well, I went after the show, like I was just new to all this and didn't know what to expect. That I literally went in with my friends, 2 burgers, chips, two burgers, 2 chips, milkshake, walked around Cork City in Ireland, then got more food. And then I ended the night by going to Domino's, getting a large pizza, sides and all that. And the same thing as that, like I couldn't actually make it to my bedroom. I had to lie on the floor beside the couch, and I crawled my way to the bathroom to vomit everywhere. And it was that kind of moment that literally I said in my head, like, yeah, I can't have this feeling. So I wasn't understanding what it was going to be like. Whereas what I see at times is when you're finished your diet, and say, for example, I have a lot of girls lately who finished their diets, and girls get very, very, like, they're very accustomed to that low level of body fat. Like, let's have an example of like guys versus girls. So you finish your shows now, and you were like, I love that I'm competing again next year. The first thing you look at is, I'm doing classic physique, I'm 6-7 kilos, say, under your cap. The first thing you want to do is get massive. Like, a guy's mentality is, I'm going to go get absolutely fucking massive after prep. Like, obviously you're going to control your food a little bit, but on the flip side with females, what we tend to see is, no matter, even though they want to like make improvements to their physique, they're very attached to that lean look, and it's very, very hard to break. And I've seen it with a lot of females that's their biggest downfall, is being married to the image of stage lean. And it's not attainable for like literally more than 2 weeks. You cannot maintain that look. Like, hormones are in the floor, thyroid function is non-existent. You have so many kind of little health implications that are coming from staying at that low body fat. Like, for example, with yourself, like, is this how your mindset is set up? Like when you're finished, is it like, I'm going to get absolutely massive? Like obviously we're not going to say Charlie's going to go and turn into a fat bastard, that he's literally just going to take it. Like obviously it's just to grow, but you're okay to step away from that 6% body fat image.
It's something I've always struggled with, to be fair, but it's something that I know I need to embrace, because for me to put on, say, 4 kilos of muscle mass, I have to put on 15, 20 kilos of body weight probably. So I've got to go from 88 to 108, 110. So I've got to go where I've never been before.
I was just about to ask you, what was your highest set point you've ever seen yourself at in body weight?
So recently would be like 102, 103 in reasonable condition. I got really fat once, did the perma bulk at like 108, and I was just eating like a dickhead. Like, it was, and this was a long time ago. But so I'd be intrigued to see how I look and feel at that point. But it's a really messed up scenario, is that when you get to that stage, all you want to do is diet, and then when you're in the fucking arse end of dieting, all you want to do is be the other end and eating everything.
Yeah, like there's never that happy medium of in between the two, because I'm currently, I say, 5 months post dieting now. So my thing was, like, I was on stage at like 96, just under, it was 95.8, 95.9 kg was my show day weigh-in, or my registration weight the day before the show. And like that, like I stayed pushing for another 6 weeks after 6-7 weeks of just maintaining a rebound post show, because like with my aspect, my cap is 100 kg. But if for me to maintain 100 kg of lean muscle, like I need that same aspect as you. We tried it last year by pushing the boundary a little bit. Like I did push the boundary. Like I went up, my highest scale weight in the morning last year was 126.2 kg. And that was, I you know what, I actually, at the time, I didn't realize I felt as bad until I started pulling the weight down. What happened is like I ended up breaking the mattress in the bed. I ended up putting a bow in the mattress, so literally where I lay in, it kind of concurved down. Struggling to get out of bed was one of the biggest things. Not the fact that I was even tired, it's just to actually lift my body weight like up was one of my struggles. And I thought at the time, like I was married to the goal of getting massive. Food wise, I was pretty much like, I wasn't in a terrible place body composition wise. Like it was like I was big, but I wasn't like over like out of shape. I was still, they did push the boundary a little bit too much. And then when I went into actually diet, first thing that happened was like I lost 15 pounds in a week. And like that's what your set point is when you move into these positions of transitioning from an off season to a prep. If you're losing 10, 15 pounds in the first week, like that's not, like, I know it's fluid, I know it's all stomach volume, etc. But if you're losing that much weight, like again, it's not going to be beneficial towards your overall goal. Like in your position now, if you need 3 to 4 kilos, like you said, like if you push yourself to that 108, like you've never like you were there, but you weren't in a good body composition wise. But if you can get back there in a new set point, that's what's going to absolutely like achieve that new level of tissue that you require. And again, where you require it, like for me at the minute, I'm 114-ish kg every day, and it's the best body composition I've held at this. I haven't pushed body weight now at all. I've been this weight like between 113 and 115 for about 4 months, like 3.5, 4 months. And literally in this set point now, like I've just allowed my body to get better and better at it. Food wise, I'm not pushing food like crazy. I find this approach now, after chatting with Callum as well, that we're looking at holding my body weight probably around the 118 as a top set point, but allowing my body composition to fall into its best possible place. Whereas what I find as well, like especially people who are new to it, like they just want to see the scale weight go up, 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 up. I had a client check in this morning, and he checked in at 90. His average weekly weight was like 91.5. The best he's ever looked at 91.5. Like you can see his abdominal wall still kind of coming in. He's starting to gain a little bit of body fat in his lower back, but I'm okay with it. But he told me now at this stage of his, like he's 10 weeks into his off season, and he told me that I feel I'm going backwards because I can still see my abs. Do you know, like it's that kind of mindset of, like you said, of trying to gain muscle tissue that we're trying to branch away from, that I'm trying to branch people away from now as well. As you don't need to go to that stage of like Jay Cutler years ago and all the lads that literally they get completely out of shape, but then obviously they're genetic gods when it comes to this aspect. And when you're setting yourself up now and you're going to be pushing towards that 108-ish, say that 105, 108 mark, like what is your kind of aspect now when you're going body composition wise? Like what is your no when you're pushing up now?
For me, it's when you have to have some definition in your midsection and your quads. For me, as soon as my midsection starts to go completely, that's when you know it's too far. Like you need to have the top upper abs. As long as you've got that, then I think your condition's like comparable. And for me, like I tend to have good quad splits. As soon as they start to go, that's when I know the pounds are packing on too much and I need to like slow it down a little bit.
Yeah. And even in that set point for people is something like one of the best aspects to do is just maintain calories, maintain, like when you start to slip, there's no need to like push calories down. If you can just recomp then at that set point, like if you spend, there is merit in spending 8 to 10 weeks at a certain set point with calories rather than pushing down by like pulling yourself down to like get that little lines back in your quads. Whereas for me, like I still have them lines in my quads at this body weight, and like they're the metrics I look out for now. Like I store most of my body fat in my glutes and my lower back. I'm expected to see a little bit of movement there. When I was up in the 125s or so, I didn't have I still could see my upper abs, etc., but I didn't have any lines in my legs. And I did see a big, like when I prepped down there, I did notice a lot of drop off through the quads, especially because of how hard I did have to diet to achieve my position for the stage. Whereas going back into my next diet, it's something that I don't want to have to reach. And even for, say, my clients now, like a lot of my females, like I'm using a certain, like when I get them to an off season, like you said, for females, I'm getting them to a certain set point in body weight, and I'm allowing them to recomp at this set point. Because again, we always think more food, lift heavier, you're going to gain a lot of muscle tissue, but we've seen from down the line that it's not always the case, that again, that you will end up adding on a lot of body fat, and especially for females, that again, there's no right for a female doing bikini to be 15 kilos over her stage weight from her previous years, because you're just going to end up making it very, very difficult for yourself. And that's when you open up the floodgates of like binge eating will come in post prep, or even trying to restrict binge, something we do see a lot of in this sport, unfortunately. Have you ever experienced anything like that yourself, like over the years?
Not really myself, but I've seen it quite a lot with clients who can't hold the radar with things. But I think a lot of that's due to them not having the right reasons for why they're doing a show or a diet or trying to get in shape. Like if something's important to you and you value something and you're being guided correctly, you should be able to stick to it. So it's not something I would massively say. One thing I would say to finish on, what would be your number one tip for people on low calorie diets to sustain it for as long as they need to?
The number one tip is definitely, when it comes to it, is definitely having a support network around you that understands your goal. Like for me, I found with clients, if they have a support network that believe in them as much as they believe in their goal, it is a lot easier. Say if you have a partner or say family members who don't understand what you're doing, don't care, like literally they can see you're struggling and they don't understand the reasoning. That is one of the biggest reasons I see preps fail. Like when I see diets fail, is the lack of understanding for what you're currently doing. Again, as you said as well, if you need to be true to your reasoning for why you're doing the diet. Like, are you doing this for Instagram? Are you doing this for a few likes on your page? Or are you truly enjoying the process? Like what I would say for me there, I recently had a girl, the girl that actually won the overall in the Irish show last week. She ended up in a very poor starting position because she had a few issues with food and all that, even through her off season. We had to pull her down 20 plus kilos, and I made her do 1 or 2 shows earlier. And her aspect was, I'm going to do these shows and I won't be in shape. I'm not going to be in the top placings. And my aspect was to her, I want to see how much you actually wanted. I want you to lose, and I want to see how you come out of that. I want to see, does that light that fire that you actually love throwing out what you're doing through bodybuilding? Or is the losing aspect of putting it on Instagram, does that kind of lose your interest in why you're doing it? Whereas our biggest areas when it comes to actually sustaining diets now as well is literally unsupportive members of family, partners, Instagram can be one of the biggest killers, unfortunately, of physiques, because a lot of people, for example, like I can guarantee you, when you get stage lean now, you're going to have a lot of clients who are going to come to you wanting to achieve what you achieved and not understand what it takes to get there. And it is something that, you know, yourself, you see that a lot. And from someone who's in the neck of it at the minute, like what tips would you give to people out there now? Because you're currently in that dieting phase. Like,
in the shitty phase, point number one is keep yourself incredibly busy and occupied, because an idle mind will go snacking. So I try and keep myself back to back busy as possible. And I also try and create little gaps in the day where I know I can eat my meals, so that when I am eating, I'm sitting down and consciously enjoying them, because I think that's a really big tip. A big take-home point, I would say, well, I've been drinking a lot of caffeine, but I try and not as much. So black decaf coffee with sweetener is a godsend. A diet drink here or there. I like a bit of Robinson's fruit squash with sparkling water. And I like, just like, it sounds really weird. You know, you're in a bad place if you get cut up cucumber and you put salt on it and you eat it, and that's good as a snack. Like that, that's when you know you're pushing the envelope. So that would be a winning one. But I think the big one for me is just trying to stay strong and try and spread your meals out over the day. Be aware of why you're doing it, and then just take it one day at a time.
Something you can look at it, especially when it comes to meals, that can work. If you're someone like that, like who like, sometimes when you have your first meal, you open that floodgate that you'll eat. Like, so if you have 5 meals a day and you have your first meal, say 11 o'clock, I've had clients text me who, like, on low calories, that it would be, they'd have their first meal, say 11, and then at 4 o'clock they're after texting me saying, I've ate all my meals for the day. Something I found that can help there is actually setting a timer or like an alarms on your phone, like you said, about keeping yourself busy and occupied. Have like meal 1, 2, 3 at a designated time each day. Obviously, if your schedule allows it, it's like some people, they could be in a work situation where they can't have food, or they might not have, like, whereas yourself and myself, like, we can probably decide when we want to eat every meal, that, like, being our own bosses and our own aspect, we can actually align all that. But definitely, like you said, spacing out your meals and keeping busy. As you said, like, it's when you sit down in the evening and if you've nothing to keep yourself busy, that's when the mind wanders towards these foods you shouldn't have, or, like, as in, not that food, like, there's no such thing as like having a bad food or anything like that, but we do label them as the wrong food, when it's just because our minds we're so fucked up in this position that all we want is everything we know we cannot have. But then we know it's not going to be counterproductive towards the goal if we do break that little cycle. And again, I've had clients, here's just a little thing that even just to finish up on this aspect would be, say you have a client now who does have a slip up. How do you approach that now yourself? Like, say if someone texts you, Charlie, look, I've had 10 extra rice cakes and a tub of peanut butter last night. I'm going to do an extra hour cardio. Like, that's what I hear a lot, is the first thing someone jumps to is extra cardio.
I think that's a very bad way. So I would literally just tell them to just get back on plan tomorrow, and then I'd probably assess 2-3 days after that, because I think the reality is that you then trying to hammer them more after that is going to create more of a problem.
It does. And my thing is, when someone texts me like that, it's literally, forget that it even happened, is how you have to approach it. Like, literally just put it to the back of your mind, continue on your day, don't put any extra cardio. Something I've seen that 1 or 2 coaches in the US have done lately as well, and have been doing, is if someone is struggling and they do eat off, that they tell them not to do cardio the next day. Like, they give them extra time off. So it's trying to, like, a bit of reverse psychology of that mind, that if I eat off, I'm going to have to do no cardio tomorrow. And then the guilt factor, like, there's a few ways to kind of look at it. Like, but the worst thing someone can do is hammer themselves into the ground by literally cutting their meals. Like, one of my girls just finished her shows there, and she texted me this morning saying, I had 3 rice cakes with a bit of peanut butter and banana pre-bed. Will I do an extra 15 minutes cardio? And I was like, no need, just stick to your plan. Don't worry about it. You'll get these little moments post-prep where you will have an extra little snack. Just forget about it. Get on with your day. The more you think about it, the more guilt you'll associate with having food. And that's when people will kind of struggle the most.
Great. Thank you for that, Mike. That was some words of wisdom. For everyone who enjoyed listening to this and listened to me talk about starving myself, make sure you leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to the podcast, and check out the next episode soon. I'll drop Mike's details in the podcast notes as well. So if you want to go and give him a follow on Instagram and social media. We also filmed a baller YouTube video training legs recently in Marbella. So head over to the YouTube channel and check that out. And we will see you in the next episode very soon.